All right, and we are live with Friday Night Beer. So, Tasha, you and I will get to that in a moment. But every time I just say a little prayer that because I'm not really that great with technology, so it's always a little miracle when it actually works. So, hello everyone. Happy Friday Night Feels. I don't know where everyone's located, but I know in Plattsburgh, New York tonight, it's a little chilly. So I hope wherever you are, it's enjoyable, safe, and sound. For those of you who are joining us for the first time, this is Friday Night Feels. I'm licensed mental health counselor Patrick Monette, and I have a private practice in New York State. And tonight, I am so excited and honored to have Tasha Hunter with us tonight. And yay! And I told her, I already warned her I might break out in musical song. There might be a dance. And she's just going to let me do my crazy stuff. So I appreciate that. So for those of you who don't know, Tasha is in North Carolina, and I was just telling her before we started that one of the things that's crazy is that you start following each other on Instagram. It's almost like professional dating. Oh, they like my stuff. They like me. Oh, I'm gonna like. And then with COVID, it's so hard to meet people. Professionals, and I think the more we connect. The more we can support each other during these crazy times. And one of the, so I started following Tasha, and one of the things that caught my eye is when she started posting about her new book, What Children Remember.
Yep.
And when did, and I know we're gonna spend the evening talking about it, but I just wanted to share a quick, like this is if I can share a part of it, Tasha, what really,
Yeah, of course.
So folks, this is the beginning. I'm just going to read a part of it so you can see. So it's chapter 1, the 11th year. When my father and my mother forsake me, then the Lord will take me up. Psalm 27:10. Be ready to get a beating when I get home. This is what my mother Katrina said to me in a phone call that would change the trajectory of my life forever. While the beatings I endured were commonplace, this turning point was an act of defiance in which I learned the importance of standing up for myself. At that time, I was just a few months shy of my 18th birthday and tired of well-meaning adults asking me boring questions such as, what are you going to do after high school? I had no idea. Seeing how every fiber in my body was exhausted to the brink of collapse from the daily struggle of just trying to get by. I didn't have time to lay out a well-developed plan for the next 4 years of what people call adulthood.
Wow.
It takes my breath away.
Yeah. Thank you so much for reading that. Wow.
And I'm so honored that you're here tonight because your story is amazing and it's beautiful. It's powerful. And even as I read this tonight, I get choked up of your story and then what you continue to talk about in your book.
Absolutely.
So tell me a little bit about what inspired you to write this amazing piece.
Yes. First of all, you're talking about you getting choked up. I've been on a number of podcasts and live shows. No one has purchased my book and read a portion of it during our time together, during the interview. And so that touches my heart more than you know. Okay. So Patrick, you're just my new brother.
Oh, yay.
Yeah. So just accept that you now have a new sibling.
I love this. Okay. I love it. I love it.
I am your new sibling. So I published my book in March of this year. And what inspired me to write my story is I grew up in a kind of a religious background. My entire family, they were church-going Southern folk.
Okay.
And I didn't hear in my upbringing anything about trauma.
Wow.
Had not heard the word trauma talked about in church. Had not heard about abuse talked about in church.
Okay.
And I wanted a book that could talk about that would really give readers a really honest, vulnerable, raw depiction of what trauma looks like and how it impacts three types of relationships: the relationship that I had with myself, my body,
Mhm.
how the trauma, the abuse impacted my relationships with other people, both romantically and platonic relationships, and then how the trauma impacted my relationship with God.
Right.
And out of all the books that I read, especially if there was anything, if there was any kind of talk of God, if it was a Christian book or a Christian author, it was heavy on scripture, heavy on God, but really light on exactly how they felt and what they experienced, the truth.
And how they heal with it or how they live with it.
Yes, the truth about it.
Yes.
And I didn't want a book that glossed over my experience. I didn't want a book that kind of hijacked the reality and then replaced it with life is beautiful, it's wonderful, everything's fine, God saved me. Does that make sense?
Yes, totally. Yes.
So I wanted an honest book for those of us who live in shame and secrecy of our childhood experiences.
Well, and that was one of the things actually when I was reading it, we kind of had conversations in my head, even though we hadn't met yet. Yeah. But that shame piece, I said, this is revolutionary, because the whole, one of the main components of what keep people in the cycle is that secrecy. We have to protect ourselves, that shame, and we have to protect the family. And you're like blowing it out, like this shit's coming out to be cleared and healed, and we're gonna fight because you deserve more. That's like what I could feel such a strength in your words of like when you're reading this book. And please, if you haven't got this book, go get it tonight. Go order it, get it for Christmas, because it will move you. It's moving me. It's helping me as a person, as a clinician. And I think your goal, like, you're meeting it.
Yeah,
Of changing it.
You have just really touched my heart with all of that. When I was writing my book, I kept thinking, should I put this in there? Should I put that? But I kept envisioning these imaginary people who, just like me, lived in shame of things that we didn't even cause. Not my fault. I talk about experiencing physical abuse. I talk about experiencing sexual abuse, being the survivor of physical abuse, sexual abuse, and parental abandonment.
Yes.
I also discuss how all of that stuff led me to attempt suicide.
Wow.
And nobody's talking about, in what circle can we really talk about, 20 years ago, I tried to kill myself.
Right. Right. Past the croissants. I mean,
right, like, past the freaking croissant.
Well, maybe at our family dinner now it will be.
Yeah, by the way, after the how's the weather conversation, and so there's no way to really talk about that. And so I wanted to put it, I said, if this is the only book I ever write, I'm putting it all in there.
Yes.
And I needed readers, as they were reading, to really feel how I felt in my body.
Yes.
And my thoughts and how it impacted, again, my relationships with me and others and with God.
Right. I just love that. Yeah.
Questioning my faith.
Yes.
Questioning my purpose. Am I even supposed to be here if my family of origin does not love me and is not protecting me?
Right.
Am I really meant to be here?
Right.
Well, obviously I am.
Thank God for that.
Yes. So I wanted to talk about all of that and hopefully help anybody out there that's struggling.
Right. And it's funny that you mentioned, like, the what was behind your mind, the creative piece of that, of making that decision. Because as I was preparing for tonight, I taught in the university for almost 10 years, different classes, anything from psychology to gender and women's studies to all of that. And sometimes you inherit a class, so you inherit the textbooks, and sometimes you inherit some pretty crappy textbooks. And this is a book that I would want in any one of my classes.
Wow.
Because it's real.
Yeah.
And I think, especially in the counseling fields, you want the theory, you want the application, but you want the truth. You want to know, what is it that clients go through? Like, how do you read this? How do you hear it? How do you digest it? And then as clinicians, how do we therapeutically support a person going through their healing?
Yeah.
Their recovery.
That's it. And as you have probably already read, I start from the very beginning, elementary school.
Yes.
What does anxiety and depression look like in a kid? As you know, as a clinician, most children, they get diagnosed with ADHD. They get diagnosed with oppositional defiant disorder, when a lot of times it's PTSD. They get written up.
Oppositional defiance, that one pisses me off.
Me as well.
Like,
yes.
Oh, you beat him and you're upset that he's beating other kids, or she.
Right.
Like, come on. No connection.
Right. And so instead of looking at, well, what is their ACEs score? What have they experienced in their life that may be impacting their current day-to-day reality and their ability to feel safe? Because while you're teaching English, I'm thinking about what it's going to be like when I get home and what I've got to face when I get home.
Yes.
So I can't concentrate on this. So if I zone out, or if I'm asleep in class, maybe sleeping is a way that my body's protecting itself. My nervous system just shuts down from all of the stress. You don't have to
fight for an hour or two. You don't have to fight.
Right. And so, so readers get, again, a really raw perspective of, from childhood into adulthood, what PTSD looked like. And then, of course, I was in the Air Force. I was in the Air Force for 10 years. And, well, there's no time to deal with PTSD, childhood trauma, because you're focused on the mission.
Yes.
And that's important.
Yes.
And so I had to kind of shove my trauma in the closet. It doesn't exist. We're not dealing with this because I've got to work. I've got to pretend to be okay. But I wasn't okay. I was suffering.
Right.
And then I grew up in a family where people said, well, what happens in this house stays in this house.
Yes, that's secret. Protect your family. Nothing goes out. Yeah.
But if you're not doing anything crazy, stupid, or abusive, why are you worried about me telling somebody?
Yeah, right. But as a little kid, your survival is based on your primary caregivers, or whoever it might be. Of, you don't cross family.
You're exactly right. You're exactly right. So no level of safety there.
Right. And we do have a couple comments, if I can just share them with you. Catherine is saying that this is so important. So I'm glad that she's Catherine. With us. Yes. It is. And Colby is asking a question to you specifically. How do you think COVID has impacted the way we heal with trauma? And what can we do to continue or begin healing processes with the absence of human connection outside the home? I am very interested in your book. Oh,
thank you. His name is Kobe.
Yes. I can't tell by the picture.
That's an excellent question. So from my perspective, what this whole COVID-19, this pandemic has done is literally, because we can't, there's no contact, no really physical contact, except for the people that aren't taking it seriously and they're socializing and doing things. But most people are staying to themselves. And what it's done is it's forced children and it's forced partners to remain in the home with their abuser.
because there's I don't know in North Carolina, but I know what I'm hearing is the increase of child abuse is going through the
Yes.
roof since COVID has
So
happened.
the increase of child abuse, and so because of the pandemic, it's limited the victim's ability to go to a safe place, to report to a safe person. There's no teachers, there's no co-workers to report things to.
Right.
Even online, I've even called, there's, just people that are grieving and different things and that need additional support, where there were in-person support groups. Not everybody is hosting online support groups or ways to communicate in that way. And so it's decreased resources for people and increased the occurrences of abuse in homes. And so,
and that's really interesting what you're saying too, of like, when with your experiences of, sometimes going to school, that's when you shut down. And that's been, it's hard because you hear where school is the source of torment for some children, bullying and everything. But for a lot of students, it's where they can get a meal. It's where they can be safe. It's where they can be warm. And that's been taken away with COVID for a lot of schools.
It has. And so online, what I've noticed is online engagement has definitely increased. Facebook is an early adapter of, being together and forming groups online. So I would recommend anybody out there. There are so many types of groups for people that are having similar experiences. So although you can't meet in person, you can't talk to people in person, join some Facebook groups, join online groups, reach out to your local mental health offices, private practice offices, and see what resources are available where you can be in contact with people online.
I know that NAMI, the National Alliance of Mental Illness, is a great resource that I refer to people, even if you don't have one in that area. Their website, it's a national organization, it's non-for-profit, it's amazing, and it can connect you. So even if there's not one in your town, it can connect you. And sometimes just, even talking to someone on the phone that's outside of your circle, that can just validate your feelings.
Absolutely. And that's what most people need is, when you're dealing with all kinds of struggles, especially as it relates to childhood trauma, you're really asking the people around you, do you hear me? Do you see me? Do you understand me? Like, I'm right here.
Yes.
Can you validate what I'm going through? Can you show up in a real way? And so those
exactly. Can you be genuine?
Can you be genuine? Yes. So there's all kinds of resources for that where people will listen and be there for you. So that was an excellent question.
Yeah, thank you, Colby, and thank you, Catherine. And if anyone else has any questions, please just put them in the chat, and I'll do my best to answer them. You know how I am with technology, but I have learned in almost a year of doing this. But I still get excited, so that's okay.
Yeah, absolutely.
So tell me more, for people who aren't reading it, like tell me more about the book, like your depiction of the characters is crystal clear. Like it's almost, I don't want to sound nerdy, but it's one of those things like when you're watching a movie and you're like, what's going to happen next? It's like, oh my God, this character, I can feel it. I can see it. I can, when you're talking about Mama and you're talking about Katrina, I can just visualize them and I can feel your words are so crystal clear and eloquent.
Thank you.
Of creating this really beautiful artistic depiction of who you're talking about in the book.
Yeah, and that's exactly what I was going for in writing it. Again, I read, I don't know if you've heard of the author Lydia Yuknavitch.
No.
Oh, she's amazing, Patrick. She has a book, Lydia Yuknavitch, and her book, her memoir is called The Chronology of Water.
Wow.
And I also read Roxane Gay's book, Hunger, her memoir. Both. You, again, in speaking about the body, when you're reading both of their books, you feel what they're going through. You feel it in your own body. And so I wanted the same for my book. We're not sugarcoating anything. We're not glossing over details. You're getting it all. You're getting it all. If this is the only book that I'm ever writing, which it's not.
I was gonna say, like, I was gonna put a little plug.
Yeah.
Like, you mean your first one?
Yeah.
Many more to come.
Right. But I thought I'm putting it all out there. And I talk about sex. I talk about how trauma caused me to go through this period of hypersexuality, looking for love, looking for validation, looking for someone to help me feel seen, to help me feel safe.
And that you matter.
And that I matter. And then also, is it okay to talk about sex and talk about sometimes the reason why we offer our bodies? It's because if you've experienced sexual abuse and physical abuse, it's like, well, I would rather give my body away than to have somebody take from me.
Yes.
So I'll give it to you so that you don't take it.
Right.
And then because my body didn't feel safe, I questioned my sexuality, and I felt safer with women because it was a male. It was my brother who had sexually abused me. And so I talk about all of that, and there's no shame whatsoever. I think it's important to talk about sex. I think, and so it was important for me to put all of that in there to help others who may have entered same-sex relationships from an origin of being abused, that it's okay. There's nothing wrong with it.
Right.
Whether you're in a, whatever kind of relationship you're in, being heterosexual is not like it's not the, what am I trying to say? The norm, and then anything else is abnormal.
Right.
And so whoever you're with, whoever you love, it's absolutely beautiful, wonderful, and special, and it's okay.
And whoever you feel safe with.
And whoever, that's it. Whoever you feel safe with and helps you to feel seen and valued.
Yes.
That's a big deal. That is a huge deal. And for me, for a very, very, very long time, I was with women because they helped me to feel the way that I needed to feel, during that time in my life. And so I'm in a hetero relationship right now, but for a while, I just, it was whoever made me feel safe. And I think that's okay to talk about that. I have no shame towards that at all. I love who I love.
Right.
Yeah.
I love this. Like, I have to say, when I started Friday Night Feels in March, I never anticipated encountering like the beautiful people that come on, and just like how it not only changes me, but like the people who watch this or listen to it after, and it's always so inspiring for me.
Yeah, it's you just never know who you're gonna meet. I was just telling somebody, Patrick, so I had an Instagram account for a really long time, and I didn't really do anything with it. And then I opened my private practice. And of course, when you open your private practice, it's like, you got to market, you got to be out there, you got to let people know.
Yes.
And I'm like, oh God, what am I going to do with this? What am I going to do with this social media site? But through social media, I get to meet you.
Yay!
Yeah. And I get to meet other people. And as you know, I share some really vulnerable things on my social media page.
Yes.
And then I hear from people and they're like, oh, this resonates with me. And then it helps me to not feel so alone in things that I'm experiencing or feeling. Right. And so we're all able to be there for each other in that way.
Which, by the way, so I'm just letting, for people who are on Instagram, hers is Tasha Hunter, LCSW.
That's where I live.
Okay, so I might have a quote or two from your Instagram from your book. So I might just share it right now because I can. Yeah. So this is a quote from our own Tasha Hunter of, value yourself enough to know that your abusers or anyone complicit in acts committed against you do not get to silence, define, or control you.
Yes. Yes.
And that is like
Yeah.
gospel truth, right?
That's it. That's it.
That secrecy, that silence, that you know, the psychological manipulation of, if you talk, you will be in danger, or
Yeah.
someone you love will be threatened.
Right. Or, abusers typically say, well, nobody's going to believe you.
Yes.
Or they say again, we don't talk about this outside of this house, so you have to keep that here.
Right.
And there's all kinds of ways in which families, communities, religious institutions, schools maintain secrecy and protect the abusers.
Yes.
There's all kinds of ways. And I have yet to meet a single person who has been abused and has not also dealt with or currently living with the shame from that abuse.
Yes.
And feeling like, well, who do I talk to about this? Who would believe me? Who would understand?
Right.
And so I have to put stuff out there to say, it's your story, it's your experience. And your abusers don't get to dictate whether you speak out or not.
Yes.
No
Exactly.
matter who it is.
Right. And so for those who know me, I'm trained in EMDR, and that is a trauma-informed approach, and we focus a lot on cognitions. And a lot of those cognitions of, I deserve this, or I'm not good enough, or I'm unworthy of love, or I'm a piece of shit, or I should have known better. And even getting that shit out from your soul is freeing and powerful. And then you can just let it out. And then all of a sudden your whole system can just breathe a little bit, because that toxicity holds people in that shame of abuse, in that cycle of abuse.
Yeah. All of that.
Yeah.
All of that. All day long, I work with people who, everything you just said, I'm not good enough. No one wants me. Why am I even living?
Yes.
I'm not worthy. Well, hold on. Well, where does that thought process come in?
Right.
If I tell somebody, what's going on, nobody wants to hear from me. Right. Where do you get that from? Oh, well, when I was this age, this thing happened and it was totally invalidating, or I was abandoned, or this thing happened and everybody alienated me. Mm-hmm. So sometimes I work with people who were holding me in things for 40 years.
Yes. Yes.
Right. And trying to dismantle that. It's an amazing process to see, and to be able to hold space for my clients who sit right in front of me sharing their stories.
Yes.
Sometimes for the first time. Mm-hmm. And being able to say, yes, absolutely, you're important. Absolutely, you're supposed to be here. The universe knows you're here. You're mm-hmm. supposed to be here.
Yep.
And so please keep living. Please. When I attempted suicide, I was 21 years old. I had not even begun to live my life at 21.
Right. Right.
Well, now I'm 41 years old, and it's still like, now I just want to live forever. But at 21, I carried everything that you just said, this cognition, this I'm unworthy. Mm-hmm. I don't matter to anybody.
Right.
And it was based off of how I had been treated from my family of origin.
Yes.
What I had kind of learned from them.
Yes.
Or adopted from them, from things
right.
said and done to me.
And those bonds, those attachments can be amazing and wonderful and powerful, and they can be the most destructive.
Yes, absolutely.
Absolutely. It depends on the system of the family, of just, even when there's a overall healthy, safe family, but they still have like that guilt or that shame. Mm-hmm. I still work with a lot of adults of like, you don't owe them anything. Like, if you're doing something out of, out of obligation, that's not love. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So I just want to let you know that Colby checked in with us, and they said, thank you for your answer. The pandemic has certainly illuminated the holes in our mental health systems. Thanks again.
Thank you, Colby. I appreciate your question.
And then Catherine is sharing, the honesty and rawness is really needed to shine the light into the darkness of trauma. Thank you for your vulnerability and truth.
Thank you, Catherine.
Yeah.
Love that.
Some amazing people tonight joining us.
It is. It is. Absolutely.
And, going back to that family thing, it's like when you were writing this, were you afraid of family attacking you? I mean, that was my mind. I'm just like, I wonder if.
Kind of. I mean, at the time, so I've been estranged from the majority of my family for the past 20 plus years. And I mean, I have a new family now. So the two topics that I worried most about, actually three. One, my attempted suicide.
Mm-hmm.
What are they going to think about me? Two, my sexuality, because in some circles, in some communities, heterosexuality is the default.
Yes.
And if you're anything other than heterosexual, then that's a problem for some reason. So I worried about how people would view me if they knew that I had loved women.
Right.
That I've been in relationships with women. What are they going to say, especially family and friends who are Christians and who do not support same-sex unions, same-sex relationships? I worried a lot about that. And then I also worried about, because of trauma, there was a really long time where I had really toxic relationship habits.
Oh, yes.
Where I couldn't trust people, where I would end relationships prematurely because I was like, this doesn't work out. And I would find some reason to end, the friendship. And so I worried, well, what are my friends who I may have ghosted, or the relationship didn't work out? What are they going to say? And then I thought about things and I said, this is my story. And I'm not going to die with my story.
Right.
And if it helps someone else to see, oh, wow, it's not just me.
Yes. They're not alone.
They're not alone in fearing having a broken heart. They're not alone in fearing, can I trust this other person? Sure, if you've ever been traumatized in any kind of way, it impacts your ability to trust people.
Yes. And I love how you're also bringing up friendships, because we don't talk about that. Normally it's like romantic, but the platonic friendships or coworker is a whole other dynamic of trauma. And not being able to trust people, not being able to hang out, to communicate, to deal with conflict of any way. It's a whole other dimension. What have your experiences been like in those areas?
So there were several, because of early childhood trauma. I went into relationships in a variety of ways. One, expecting people to love me and treat me in the way that I loved and treated them. And I loved hard. I would meet people and just automatically, without even thinking, become really bonded to them. And I didn't understand, well, they kind of need to earn my trust. And then I also went into relationships trying to fix. If they have a problem, if they're going through something, I'm the person that needs to help. I've got to help them through their situation. I've got to fix whatever is going on in their life.
Yes.
How toxic, right? And I just wanted them to be better, wanted to help them. If they were in a domestic, a relationship where there was domestic violence, or if they were hurting, if they were sick, if they were anything, any kind of issue, I wanted to fix it for them, make it all better, be their savior. Because, well, obviously,
no one was out for you.
Right. So let me be the person that I needed for so long. but they didn't need that. They just needed a friend.
Right.
And then I would trust people, like I said, just prematurely without them earning my trust. And then other relationships I didn't trust at all. And I'm like, I don't know about this. And so there was just all of these toxic relationship habits with platonic friends. And none of us ever talk about the fact that when you lose a friend, there is a whole ugly grieving process that happens
Mm-hmm.
when you lose a friend that you really love and thought, oh, this person is really cool. And all of a sudden they're not in my life anymore. And what do I do with that?
Right. And sometimes when you don't know why.
Yeah. And you don't know. Yeah. And a lot of times I didn't know why. Why did they walk away? I talk about in my book, there were a couple of friends that I had disclosed, my previous relationship history, my same-sex relationships. And for just maybe coincidence, almost immediately after that, we were not friends anymore.
Wow.
And I don't know what to attribute that to. It probably had nothing to do with my earlier conversation or disclosure. But I just kind of noted that because I didn't know, because there was no communication, it left me crafting my own story, my own narrative, and just wondering what happened. Did I make a mistake by trusting this person with something that was really close to my heart, that had been a secret or not, any. So I don't know. I just created these stories, and wow, it would have been nice to have known, oh, we just lost contact. Life happened. We went in separate ways, but I didn't have that information.
No. And so it shatters your trust again.
It shattered my trust every time.
Right. And then something must be wrong with me.
Something
That's where my mind
right.
would go.
And so I talk in the book about, like, it's like I wore a sign on my head, like wanted, I wanted a mommy. I wanted friends. I wanted close relationships. I didn't know how do I do that? There was so much hurt, from
Right.
so many different ways. So,
Right.
And here's the other thing, Patrick. I grew up experiencing trauma, but as an adult, I didn't know how to create healthy relationships.
Right. Yeah. So we become our worst nightmare.
Yeah.
And that's one of the things when I'm working with people. I remember having this conversation where I say, all right, I need you to take a breath. It's okay that you're like your mom and dad. And they're like, don't you insult me? Not everyone, obviously, I'm just joking. But, if we don't acknowledge where we come from, if we don't acknowledge, this is what I learned, we can't learn anything new.
Yeah.
It's like trying to, it's like being really full and trying to stuff more food down there. Like, you got to get it out. You got to get it out of your system. You got to break the cycle, but you can't do that if you haven't identified it.
Right.
And I love that simple but old saying, the truth will set you free.
It did. Writing What Children Remember, it's like it liberated me. I found my voice after publishing, because I'm like, I'm done with this shame stuff. I'm done with it.
Right.
I'm done with the secrecy. I'm done with fearing another person's judgment. They don't get to tell me how to live my life. Mm-hmm. I'm not going to feel bad for any part of my life and my process for getting to where I am today.
Right.
If I had any other journey, I wouldn't be me.
Right.
So I'm not going to allow my story to kind of hold me hostage. And so now, I think after I published, for a while, I was stuck on the word liberate. And I said, I think, I just believed it's my job, my purpose, my life's purpose, to liberate others from that shame. I still believe that.
Yeah. Yeah. And if you read the book, which you should, for people who are listening or watching, it and that, I said jokingly, when you're on Instagram, it's kind of like that dating, but you do get to know people a little bit on Instagram. Like you were asking me, it's like, hey, are you cooking a lot or what? And
Mm-hmm.
you build kind of a connection, especially with COVID. And so you're reading the book, but then I like seeing your posts. Like, you're a real person.
Yeah.
And I don't, I hope that I'm expressing myself correctly. Of sometimes when you read a book, it's like we can detach it, like, oh, this isn't real, this is just a story. But then when it's like, wait a minute, she's just posted about this, like, this
Yeah.
is real. This is happening. Like, I can talk to her about this. Like, I think it shatters our um our protection, our privilege. Like, oh, I can't hide from this anymore. Like, this is real, this is happening. And you know I got to figure out what that means to me.
Yeah, it I love what you just said. So people read my book and sometimes they think, "Oh, everything's good now." She's still alive, everything's good. She's a therapist now. No. Because I'm a human, not a robot.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Yes.
So because I'm human, I have complex emotions, and I'm able to sometimes when I'm with my clients, which I actually specialize in the very thing that I went through, childhood trauma.
Yes.
And without sharing with them my entire story, sometimes when they're talking about their own experiences, I'll just kind of say, if it's appropriate during the session, I might say, wow, that really resonates with me, or there's a part of me that is really feeling like what you're saying right now. Like, I get it. I've been through that,
Mm-hmm.
Oh, you have? Yes. Yes. So they understand.
Yeah.
And I don't want anybody sitting in front of me thinking that I've just got it all figured
I
out.
know.
Nope.
Yep.
Because I'm human and
Yes.
I'm going to be figuring it out until the day I die.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to be healing until the day I die. And I believe that there are just certain things in life that you may never heal from. It may always hurt to some degree.
Right.
And that's okay.
Yeah.
That's all right.
It's a wound. It's part of your, if you look at it like we're a mosaic or a quilt.
Yeah.
It's part of our story.
That's it. It's part of my story. And so however I've gotten from that point A to where I'm at now, it's all good. It was all a part of my process. I made a lot of mistakes, made a lot of bad decisions.
Right.
But then I come out on the other end, and is it okay for me to be vulnerable enough to share my experience with somebody else that might have gone through the same thing?
Mm-hmm.
Maybe they're estranged from their family as well. They had to do it for their own safety, for their own survival.
Yes. And I was thinking when you were talking about it a little while ago, like PTSD and the different symptoms. It's interesting because I don't know what your experiences are, but in my practice, sometimes I'll see people will come in with diagnoses from other people, and they think they're crazy, like, oh, I should get over this, I should do that, anxiety, depression. And I find that when we have the conversation about anger,
Yeah.
ooh, it's life-changing. Of you sure as hell can be pissed about this. You can be angry. You can be angry at yourself. You can be angry at me for talking about it. But you can be angry at the people who did this and who didn't keep you safe.
Mm-hmm.
Like,
Mm-hmm.
and then, talk about liberating. It's like, oh my God, I don't have to hold on to this anymore. Like, it's okay that I'm pissed off.
Absolutely. Oftentimes I will say, when my clients are, they say, well, I know this is silly and I shouldn't have reacted that way. And I'm like, no, I would have reacted the same way.
I say that too. And they look at me, I'm like, I probably would have punched them. Like, who?
Yes.
Like,
yeah, it's validating.
Yes.
We all need to be validated in what we're feeling.
Yes.
And so so when they come to me, they're getting a real person. And I'm not going to make them feel bad for any emotion that they are feeling.
Right.
Just not going to happen.
Right.
Yeah.
I love this.
Mm-hmm.
I just wanted to share, Colby checked in with us again and said, I've gone through emotional and sexual trauma, and to hear you talk about your experience is just so powerful to me. I connect with you from trust to love. I thought these were just the feelings I was having. I appreciate you.
Colby.
Thank you, Colby.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Thank you, thank you, thank you. Your words mean a lot to me. Like, I could totally get emotional just
Yeah.
hearing.
Like you just want to like hug. Like
Yeah.
I'm a hugger.
Yeah.
I'm a
Yeah.
hugger.
Me too.
Appropriately,
Me too.
therapeutic.
Yeah. Yeah.
Just-
Exactly.
but you hear that pain and, just even that word trust, because, what I was saying a few minutes ago, that trust is shattered. It's also internally that, as the survivor, the trust that you can't trust yourself anymore if you ever could.
Mhm.
And then, there's such a violation of the sacredness. And what's interesting is I've had this conversation recently about using the word safe in therapy and how really you have to be careful, because as you're talking about with your brother and your experiences, is it was safe. It was someone
Mhm.
there is that element of familiarity. And so when you're in therapy and you're saying, oh, I want you to feel safe, it's like, I don't even know what that means anymore.
What is that?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And sometimes clients will say, well, I've never told anybody about, this thing that happened, and I don't know if I can talk about it. I say, look, you've been through a lot and you're just meeting me.
Yes.
So you're not supposed to trust me at our first meeting or our second meeting. It takes time
Yes.
to develop that trust. And you've got to see if, you've got to kind of test me out and watch me and kind of figure out if our energy's matching and
Yes.
can you trust me? So
Right.
so it takes time, and I'm willing to do, to spend that time with you so that we can develop that.
Right.
And so I understand if you've got parts that are like, nope, we're not talking about it.
Nope. Abort
Not going
this
to mention
plan.
that. Yeah, not going to
Shut
mention
down.
that. And so so I get that. And also when there's a violation, like for me, I was 8 years old. My brother was 12. I don't know a lot about him. I've been estranged from my family, but what I can say is that what it did to me is I'm 8 years old, had no idea about my body, about my vagina, or that my body could be used to pleasure another person. And all of a sudden I'm acutely aware, like, oh, whoa.
Mhm.
And then I'm questioning every person I'm around. Are they going to do the same thing to me? Am I
That
safe
must have just
around
been
them?
exhausting on your little sister.
Right. So I
Oh,
grow up with all of this and then expecting, like, oh, well, that happened, so that must be what they all want.
yes.
They just want my body.
Yes.
And not being able to trust my own intuition,
Right.
because I thought I could trust him. I thought I could trust my mother. But it was my mother who first told me she wished I were dead and that she would have aborted me.
Oh my God.
That's my mother. She carried me in her womb.
Right.
She's the reason I live today. She brought me into the world, but she was the first person to, one, abandon me, and two, tell me that I shouldn't have been born.
Wow.
So when you think about people that commit suicide, I can't speak for everybody. I can only speak
Right.
for myself. But what it did is it fostered that belief, that early belief that I'm not supposed to be here,
Yes.
because my mother told me I'm not supposed to be here. I
Right.
should have aborted you. I should have killed you when I had the chance. And she intentionally used the word kill.
Oh my God.
So I grew up, and then by 21, I'm thinking I should just kill myself.
Yes.
And so, and at 10 years old, I'm walking to the bus stop in the mornings. I leave my home, I'm walking to the bus stop at 10 and saying to God, God, please bring me to heaven.
Mm.
Please bring me to heaven. I don't want to deal with this anymore, because I felt very unloved. I was unloved. I didn't have anybody in close proximity to protect me. And so at 21, I thought, okay, you're not going to bring me to heaven. Well, I'm going to get out of here some kind of a way, because I'm not supposed to be here.
Right.
But that thought, and we never, I don't know. I just really, it took a while for me to kind of connect the dots. Oh, that's why I'm believing that I shouldn't be here.
Right. Right.
He told me that.
Yeah.
And I believed it. And so
Because she had that power.
She had that power.
Yes.
And so what children remember, there's a chapter where I write about, we remember the things that were said. Remember the things that aren't said. We remember the people that are there,
Mm-hmm.
and the people who are not there, who are for some reason absent in our experiences or quiet. And so,
Complacent,
yeah,
like you said.
right. So, in some kind of way, there's complicity there. There were so many family members that told me, "Oh, your mom's crazy, or she's this or that, or she had these issues." But why didn't you protect me?
Yes. Why didn't you step in?
Right? Why didn't you step in if you
Right.
knew this? And so, anyhow, I don't know. I feel like I'm rambling.
No,
So,
you're not. Oh my God, I could go for hours. There were two pieces that I wanted to just throw out and get your opinion on. Is one is, you're talking about very specific types of abuse. I think sometimes when I'm working with clients, there's that comparison. And I don't know if you've seen that. It's like, well, I wasn't sexually, I was never
yes,
hit. I was never
yes,
this or that. But oh my God, there's this whole psychological damage. There's this whole abandonment, neglect.
yes. Mm-hmm.
And I'm just, what are your experiences of like trying to help clients validate? It's like it's not a competition. It's all shit.
It's all shit.
Yeah.
Yes, all of it.
Yes.
And all of it is traumatic. All of it. So it doesn't matter. Maybe you grew up in a home and you had a 2-parent home and you were not sexually violated, but maybe one parent abandoned you emotionally, physically, was not there to take care of you.
Right.
Maybe you lived in a home with a lot of family members, grandparents and cousins and da. But no one told each other that they loved each other, right?
Right.
They couldn't say the words, "I love you."
Yes.
Whatever your trauma is, whatever, it's all like there's no hierarchy of, well, this is worse than this. No. Your experience may be just as detrimental as mine.
Yeah. There's
no,
this. I'll see if I can send it to you, but there's this amazing TED Talk where this woman is talking about coming out as a lesbian, and she's saying we're all in closets. My heart is my heart. Your heart is your heart. Let's just support each other in all of this. And it's
send that to me.
Yeah, I will. Oh, don't worry. You'll be.
Yes.
I hope you come back to Friday Night Feel. You're part of the Friday Night Feels clan now. Your family.
I told you we're siblings at this point, so of course.
And I have one other area, before we run out of time, is how do you fit in a relationship with God now? Because in your book, every chapter has, is it a psalm?
Well, not every chapter, but there are a lot of chapters where I talk about God in some kind of a way.
Okay.
And so here's my relationship with God. We're on the same page. I just believe, it's my belief that God didn't cause the things that were going on with me. They happened.
Right.
God was not included in that plan. Like, okay, I'm going to make sure that Tasha lives through complete hell. It happened without God's permission. That's my belief. But that God and I are on the same page, and that God accepts and approves of all parts of who I am today.
Right.
And have been. So I don't have to be perfect. I don't have to be better. I don't have to try harder. I don't have to be a do-gooder. I'm good.
Right.
Sometimes I refer to God as just God. Sometimes it's God is a woman, and sometimes she's a Black woman. Mm-hmm. And so it just depends. Yeah. It just depends on the day. But God is, in my opinion, bigger than what our ideas, because we all create these images in our head of whatever God is. The God of the trees, the sun, the moon, the wind, of all creation. I believe that God approves of me, and I don't have to try to be anything different than who I am. I don't know if that answers your question.
Totally. I love it. It's so beautiful and genuine and real. And I think, in my own experiences, I'm just thinking of like when I was going through a hard time when I was younger, and, I grew up Catholic. So a lot of it inadvertently, is like suppress. Like, it wasn't anything of like, oh, let's get it out. It was just like, praying I've learned that praying, you have to be specific of what you're asking for. And, it's just like, oh, just fix it. It's like, well, what do you want to
What
fix,
do you
right?
want to fix?
And I remember sometime I was going through a depression and I was having a conversation about spirituality and anger with God. And like, why would God allow this to happen or whatever, like those type of conversations. And someone said, well, if you believe God is this unconditional loving parent, God can handle your anger.
I'm gonna throw this stress ball at you.
And so I got pissed. And
Yes,
I lost my shit. And I was like, all right, let's go. You and me.
Yes.
Cosmic.
That's it. That was a part of my journey, is coming to the understanding that if God is God, and God can't be thinking like I think, because I'm a mess. So if I'm going to believe in some higher power, some deity, I don't want a God that thinks in the same way that I think.
Right.
And God can handle my doubt. God can handle my F-bombs. God can handle, my back and forth. Are you even real? If you're real, where are you at? Why aren't you coming down here? Do you see this shit show? Why aren't you doing? God can handle all of that.
Yes.
That is my belief. So it helps me to believe that there's got to be something better. But at the end of the day, I've written What Children Remember. I make it my point to speak out about trauma anywhere that I can. I make it my priority to provide safe places for all people. My practice obviously is LGBTQ plus affirming.
Love it.
Obviously. Come on now.
And you're doing, just so if people want to get a hold of you, is Instagram, and then also you do virtual and limited in office with it. I know it's just complicated.
I do limited in office. I do virtual. But if people just want to connect and see what I'm talking about, because I'm always talking about something, find me on Instagram, because that is where I post a lot of these kinds of talks, these kinds of discussions, any podcast that I do. Also, I've got a podcast coming out in February.
Yay!
So, and it's called When We Speak. Ooh. And so every person that will be appearing on my podcast will be talking about something hard that they survive, whatever it is. And then telling listeners, this is how I got through it.
That's beautiful.
Yeah.
That's so inspirational and amazing and loving. And before we end tonight, I'm going to share with you another one of your quotes. Dear survivor, you don't need to be different to be loved. You don't have to be quiet to be accepted. You don't have to try harder to make others happy. You don't have to forgive to be worthy.
Oh, I love my writing. Yes.
I do too. All right, everyone. So thank you everyone for coming for Friday Night Feels and the people who are going to be watching it. And remember that Tasha's book, What Children Remember, please go out and read it. I think, if you've experienced abuse, neglect, or trauma, someone you've known, or if you don't know anything about it and you just, you're not really sure, it's an amazing read. And Tasha, thank you so much for joining me tonight. It's been an honor, and I hope you come back to Friday Night Feels soon.
I'm definitely coming back anytime. I love it here.
I love it.
This is the coolest ever.
Yay. And I hope you have a wonderful holiday and a happy new year.
You as well.
All right. I'll talk to you everyone soon. Take care.